Listen to me. If there was a wise man who would ever think of this, they would say in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. For I am the man himself. If you smell what the man is cooking. That's right. What is going on, guys? This is the Club of the Man 1993. I know you can receive the reflection in my sunglasses. You gotta keep this in mind. I must keep these on just for a few minutes of this review. Because we, of course, had a nice little surprise on this episode of SmackDown. A moment of showing where he can show up anytime he wants. He's lurking around. They may not have done the match at WrestleMania 39 this year, even though it was revealed on the Pat McAfee show earlier in the day on Friday. It was supposed to happen. But unfortunately, things happened and it didn't work out. And when asked about WrestleMania 40, he just said, I'm open. But we will talk about that opening segment that I even think could tease to maybe a possible tag match at Survivor Series. I'll talk about that, though, when we get to it at that part of the show. But this is my review of this past Friday night episode of SmackDown, the September 15th, 2023. And it took place in Denver, Colorado. Home of, the home state of the Colorado Rockies. Very rocky. The People's Show. What are those teases for? We are going to talk about it. So let's just roll right in and talk about the show. Because we got to talk about that opening segment. So, the show started off. And it was, let's go! Oh, 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 oh. Yep, you get the gist. But Pat McAfee made an appearance. As I said earlier in the day, he had a certain interview just about an hour up the road from Denver with a certain great one, a certain electrifying one. You know, this person is the most electrifying man in all of sport entertainment. We'll talk about him in a second. So Pat McAfee comes out. He greets the crowd, talks about doing his day job and keeping up with the WWE when he realized SmackDown was only an hour away. So he thought he'd come down to feel the universe. And then we get A-Town down. A-Town down. A-Town down. Although Austin Theory's character has sucked this year, I still gotta get credit. I do love his entrance. I do love how the light shines down on him. Well, they didn't do it on this episode where they kind of spin around and you see him talking. I don't know what the heck he's saying to himself, but I do like that entrance. So Theory comes out and he says, "This ain't SmackDown. It's Austin Theory live," which is just blatantly untrue. Him and McAfee, who have history together, remember they had a match at WrestleMania 38. They argue back and forth over whether Theory is copying Pat's whole deal, which given that they're dressed identically. And basically, again, saying how that this is the people's show. And then, for the first time in 4 years, and this time it was unannounced. Because the first time, first off, apparently this was so secretive that I think on Fightful Select's rundown of the show, this wasn't even mentioned on there. But We heard the noise. And again, for the first time in a long time, because usually it was advertised, this time it was not. He came. If you smell what The Rock is cooking, that's right. Dwayne The Rock Johnson came out as a surprise and got a rock star reaction, of course, as he should. No pun intended. So, after, of course, embracing the universe and the crowd going nuts, The Rock gets to the ring. Austin Theory starts to talk to The Rock. But then The Rock tells him to shut his bitch ass up and says he doesn't know how all this works. He does all of his whole, finally, The Rock has come back to Denver. And Theory says, finally, people get to see The Rock and Austin together again. But it's not the boring Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's a real ass kicker who's going to be the entire Mount Rushmore. The Rock says, Theory does, it doesn't, well, you're going to say The Rock says, and Austin Theory tries to do the, it doesn't matter what you think. And of course, he got so excited, he thought he had nailed it, this, and that. But then The Rock turns around, he goes, The Rock talks about the people and does a Stone Cold impression. And he says, this is The Rock show, and what the people say does matter. And here's Austin's trash talk. He says, Theory from A-Town is clearly an a-hole. And The Rock is going to show him. And it does, I guess there's this old chant The Rock used to do. He'll point to one side of the crowd and they say, you are. The other side, an asshole. Which, of course, the crowd was hot for. Of course, the problem is, though, is that Fox bleeped it out. So, basically, what hurt this segment, and I try not to grade it based off the hurting that segment, was the fact that, again, that was getting bleeped out. And that's happened so many times and more, where something gets bleeped out, and you hear something also important that can't be said. So it's like, what's the point of us even watching it then, if that's the case? Which was a bummer. So, that all happens. And of course, they even swapped it up which side said what. But then The Rock promises to whoop Austin Theory's candy ass. And then Austin attacks first, but The Rock hits a spine buster. He then sets him up, and then he directs traffic with the most electrifying move in all of sports entertainment. And he hits the people's elbow. And then Pat McAfee squares up, and he does his own people's elbow. Wasn't as smooth as The Rock's, but, But, yeah, that was very cool seeing Dwayne out there. Like I said, it's the first time in a while, because I think the past couple times he showed up, it was announced. Like I think for SmackDown 1000 or 15 years of SmackDown. I can't remember which one it was, when he had the segment with Becky Lynch and King Corbin. That was announced. That was advertised. He would be there. In 2016, when he returned on the road to WrestleMania 32, that was announced. I gotta say, the last time I think was probably when he appeared in the 2015 Rumble match to help Roman Reigns get a better crowd reaction, and it didn't work. Yeah, it didn't work. No, that's a lie. Because WrestleMania 31, he appeared also, and he wasn't advertised there. So, WrestleMania 31, I would say, is the last time. I still remember some of my favorite turns of his that. I still remember when he appeared and confronted Rusev in Buffalo, which that came out of the blue, and that was awesome. But, yeah, that, again, as I said, WWE anymore seems to always advertise these big names that have been rumored, and then they ruin the surprise saying, by the way, this person will be here tonight, because they're desperate to grab the ratings. I mean, I still don't think anything would be kept as much of a secret as when CM Punk made his AEW debut on Rampage. Again, they sold out the United Center based off of a rumor, and look what happened. Which, by the way, again, I don't want to talk about it much. Apparently, Punk was doing some MMA commentary, which, good. Again, I feel like that's I feel like, if he's not going to do anything else, that is more fitting for him right now. He seems to really enjoy doing that. Of course, it's funny if he would have gone back to UFC or something, which I doubt he will. He will sadly be working for WWE because of the TKO closing officially in. And also, by the way, I forgot to mention at the beginning, this was the first WWE show under the TKO. So, I think it was a good show for the most part to start out, by the way. But anyways, while on commentary the other night, Punk said he's got all the time on his hands for the next 2 months. And people are still speculating Survivor Series is going to be in Chicago. People wonder if he's going to debut, if he's going to return there. I'm still back to the whole, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. Because I didn't want to address this, but I'm going to address it. Especially with how Punk, when he returned, basically acting like him being in WWE was not even counted for him, because he said when he left professional wrestling, when he left Ring of Honor, and he came back to professional wrestling when he joined AEW. I feel like he looked like a hypocrite if he went back to WWE at this point. I just can't see it. I know he went back and made amends, but this and that. So I still am not gonna believe it until I see it. But we'll see. Anyways. But I'm not gonna hype it up for the longest time. But anyways, yes. So we got The Rock. We then had AJ Styles take on Finn Balor. Decent match. Finn Balor won though because Jimmy Uso got involved and interfered and attacked AJ Styles when the referee wasn't looking. We're going to talk about the bloodline stuff at the end. Because my opinions this week especially have shifted a little bit with this bloodline storyline. And this episode also just kind of exposed it as well. But we'll save that all for the end. But Finn Balor does win with a crucifix pin. Afterwards, backstage, we see Pat McAfee and The Rock recapping the opening segment. And who does The Rock happen to run into? Mr. Or as The Rock calls him, the big fat bowl of Fruity Pebbles! But anyways, they square up face to face. And you get the vibes like, oh shoot. Once in a lifetime will turn into twice in a lifetime. They are 1-1. No, I am not implying doing a third match. Do not do a third match. The second match is bad. First one was the right one. The second match, But anyways, John offers a handshake. He tells him welcome home. They handshake and they hug it out. Okay, like I said, we'll save the bloodline stuff for the end. So then we have the LWO come out. And then Ray greets them and offers nothing but love and respect. And says when he came to SmackDown a year ago, he was at a crossroads. But now he has a great family around him with the LWO. And he's also the United States Champion. Santos Escobar then talks up Ray stepping up to win the title and what that meant and how his dream was always to face his idol with a title on the line. So he wants that to happen. And Ray's like, definitely. So they agreed to have a match for the U.S. title. Probably sometime soon. Well, then out come Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. Bobby says tag teams have been falling apart and trying to patch things over with awkward love fests. And this is going to be easier than he imagined. And then the LWO accept the challenge. And we get Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde of LWO getting squashed by the Street Profits. where they had that revelation finisher, that like double team neck breaker finisher they have on Joaquin Wilde. Afterwards, though, Bobby Lashley directs them to attack the LWO some more, and they did. So even though of course the crowd is hot behind them, I think this is where I officially say that Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits are definitely heels. So I will do a turn alert for them today regarding that. But they beat them down, and Santos Escobar tries to get involved, but Escobar gets attacked by Lashley from behind. But then Ray makes the save, but then Bobby cracks Ray in the face. Bobby Lashley and Rey Mysterio feud actually may not be too bad. Have they ever wrestled before? Different. We'll see how that goes. We also get announced that the 2024 Royal Rumble will be taking place in Tampa, Florida. Cool. And then we have The Miz and L.A. Knight. Yeah! Which, by the way, I did a speech because I was a groomsman in a wedding this weekend. And of course, my friend, who he's been on here, Mr. Penta L. Miller, or Joe Miller, was the groom actually for the wedding. He was the one who got married, and I was a groomsman at his wedding. And he allowed me to do a speech, and I, of course, made a ton of wrestling references. And of course, I started it with, "Let me talk to you," and ended with, "And that is not just an opinion, that is a fact of life." Yeah! But anyways, LA Knight and The Miz had another good match. They have very, very solid off-the-chart chemistry. LA Knight does get the win with the blunt force trauma. Afterwards, though, he grabs a mic. And he says, the day he set foot on SmackDown, he said he was coming for gold. So he looked at the top of the mountain, and he sees all the different options. He doesn't care if it's Rey Mysterio, Gunther, Seth Rollins, or Roman Reigns. Keep in mind, he did have that backstage with Paul Heyman last week. And he says, you got to understand, it's not just a catchphrase. He's top 2, and he ain't number 2. Because it's whose game is it? L.A. Knight. Yeah! So, L.A. Knight is now coming for gold, as he should at this point. I mean, what else is there to do? I mean, that's the only thing though. Like, if he was on Raw, definitely would need to be the one to dethrone Gunther. But he's not on Raw. Yes, he just had a crossover brand feud with him and The Miz, but you still gotta stick to the brand split. Especially if the whole story is somebody's moving over to SmackDown, which is probably gonna be Cody, and the whole point is that pointless segment on Raw where Dom and JD just interrupted him for no reason. Was just a stall time, which is all everything is now is with the Bloodline and Cody Rhodes is they're stalling because they're trying to get it to WrestleMania. And of course, the more they stall, the more cracks and plot holes are formed. Again, we'll talk about that at the end with the Bloodline storyline. Skip over that. Backstage, Adam Pearce has a meeting with Pretty Deadly. And basically telling them, because I guess they have it on TV because Elton Prince is having a shoulder injury. And he told us he's going to be back in the ring soon, but then Prince cries about how he's a shadow of the man he used to be. And Pearce is like, well, if your shoulder's hurt, why are you in a wheelchair? And then they're trying to get their old self back in no time with the whole, yes, boys, do you really care? No, I don't. They're nothing special. Bayley and Dakota Kai were talking about Dakota Kai's absence backstage and whether or not they feel she's ready for Asuka next week. And Dakota tells Bayley she has to show up against Asuka tonight and says she's been so distracted, it's a real question whether or not that Bayley is ready for Asuka. So then we have Bayley versus Asuka. Match is fine. But then during the match, we had Shotzi Blackheart come out and and caused a distraction, and it led to Asuka getting a pinfall roll-up on Bayley. Which, okay, like, again, like, we drifted away from the Shotzi storyline for a bit. Now, of course, since Triple H, well, even though, like, again, here's the real test, because apparently Vince is back from medical leave. But, of course, now with TKO, Vince does not have the power he has. Even though part of me is worried that what if this is just because Vince McMahon is all buddies with like Ari Emanuel and all these other guys. Like, what if this is just a setup for them to say, you know what? I don't want this. Vince, you can have it, basically. Like, I'm kind of worried that could happen, but if it doesn't, stays the way it is with Vince just being the chairman, executive chairman, and just taking care of the business side, doesn't. Because apparently Triple H has to report to Nick Khan, which would be awesome to just do that instead of Vince. Then cool. But once again, like I said, especially with how desperate Vince was to get back in, by bullying his way back into the company because he was the majority shareholder at the time, I still just can't help but worry there's something else behind this. Like, again, when the sale was first announced, and he was being interviewed, and he said that he didn't really want to stick around, but Ari talked him into staying. I don't believe a single word of that. I really don't. So, it's still, like, a wait and see thing. I want to be positive that this could be good. But right now, I'm still concerned. But anyways, so yes, with the Shotzi and Bayley storyline, there's been some inconsistencies. Shotzi has beaten Bayley twice already on a tag match with distractions. So I'm not sure why they're continuing this, unless this is a setup for Shotzi to get a shot at Io at some point. Even though Io and Asuka is more pay-per-view worthy than Shotzi and Io, in my opinion. Wish I would have saved that for Fastlane. Maybe next week's match will somehow set up for Fastlane. You never know. But we'll see what happens there. Alright. Finally, well, before we get to the closing segment, which was the Grayson Waller effect with John Cena, let's talk about what all happened with the Bloodline this week. And while I'm getting that information pulled up, here's what I'm going to say to kind of like recap it and give like, you know, my overall thoughts on what's been happening with them. Like, before I can make the comparison to it, everyone's saying they think they're only doing this to extend the storyline to get it to WrestleMania, which obviously they are. I still think this is something that should be working, but I think they're overproducing it and going very back and forth. Because it's a story that should be working, but they're inserting a ton of plot holes into this. Such as, of course, there's the stuff with the one moment the Bloodline want Jimmy back in. Now they're saying you're in, but you're not in. Like, when they want, even though, and of course also people keep saying, well, why would Jimmy want to even be back in after they took him out on a stretcher a few weeks ago? Which that I get. My big thing is the reason why I feel like it's been made up for, though, is because we go back to the promo where Jay first turned on the Bloodline. And Jimmy mentioned there, again, he was on, said he had a problem with Jay being chosen as a successor for the tribal chief. So my thing is the story should simply put just be Now that Jimmy drove Jay away from SmackDown, Jay thinks he can walk right back into the bloodline, and he can now be the successor. But then the more thing, and again, it's a story that should work, but it's not working because a lot of things still don't make sense. Like, also, they were teasing cracks with Roman and Solo, even at SummerSlam during the match, right before Jimmy showed up and cost Jay the match. Why is there no longer any cracks? Also, why wouldn't Roman want to give someone who is the most loyal to him, Solo, the successor as tribal chief? And even if Jimmy would get the spot as successor, wouldn't Solo not be happy about that? But then there's stuff like this that make no sense. So Jimmy was backstage, and Heyman was lurking behind him. Finn rolls up and thanks Jimmy for his assistance in the match against AJ Styles. And Jimmy says, that was just me returning the favor. Finn said, I see your brother on Raw. And Jimmy asks what he's talking about. And Finn says he's just sure he misses his brother. And since Jay didn't say no to joining the Judgment Day, what if Jimmy joined and got the Usos back together? And Jimmy was to say he's cool, and then Finn tells him there's no leader in the Judgment Day, which means no Roman Reigns. And Jimmy starts showing some interest before Heyman rolls up and is like, what are you doing? But what makes no sense is, why would Jimmy join the Judgment Day and be a part of a group with his brother if he would join? Now, my thing is where should I go with this? I think what you should have done first is have Jay decline the offer, but have Jimmy maybe accept. Well, again, here's how I think they maybe should have done it. Have Jimmy still not be accepted into the bloodline. But when Jay declines the invitation to the Judgment Day, Jimmy could join the Judgment Day just so he can have an excuse, since the Judgment Day have the tag titles, can go to both shows, so that way he could still hide Jimmy's head. And then maybe eventually, Roman sees that he can build up trust with Jimmy again. Almost knocked my printer off the stand here. And then maybe Jimmy gets back into the bloodline. Now, I don't know. Like I said, this is a story that should be working. But instead it's just exposing more and more plot holes in it. But also, anyways, later in the show, after LA Knight calls out Roman Reigns, the rest of the champions, Heyman and Solo are watching. And Solo wants to take care of some business. But Heyman reminds him that order can only come from the tribal chief. And no order has come yet. And Jimmy's a bigger problem. Cutting deals the Judgment Day, picking fights with John Cena, and those are his problems. Not ours. Jimmy thinks he's in the bloodline. And he's of the bloodline, but he's not in the bloodline. Which, again, I don't know what the heck that even means. Soul says, I want to finish business tonight. And then Heyman's like, but who gave that order? And then he calls Roman Reigns as it goes to break. So fast forward to the Grayson Waller effect. And I knew, as soon as this was the main event, that something was happening involving the bloodline, John Cena in this. So Grayson Waller comes out, does his normal intro, hypes up his guest, John Cena. And when John comes out, he basically starts talking some trash, saying he thinks Cena needs some help as a host, because he's the host of Payback. He was stealing the spotlight, and he has to be more like Grayson, just sit back and let the story shine. And then Grayson Waller cut him off several times, berating him for making it all about him, blah, blah, blah. Talk about how Austin Theory beats Cena at Mania. And then Cena finally has enough, he takes his hat off. But then Grayson reminds him, he's just a talk show host, and it's your turn to speak. Which, by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier before I get paused for a second on the Bloodline stuff. I forgot to mention earlier, I feel like, again, if they are eventually going to do Roman and The Rock at Mania this year, even though I don't know how they'll get to it at this point, especially with the Bloodline stuff falling off the tracks. Because Survivor Series, I think has significant meaning for The Rock. I think that's where he made his debut as well. What if at Survivor Series, since also he's got history with him as well, and we kind of teased it tonight, what if they did The Rock and Pat McAfee versus Austin Theory and Grayson Waller? Nice little tune-up match for The Rock, because originally I thought maybe we'll do John Cena and The Rock versus Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, since Austin Theory has that history with John Cena also. But then I thought, you know what, that it's not something they should revisit. With Pat McAfee and Austin Theory, Austin's never beaten Pat McAfee. But they still have history that one loss wouldn't really hurt the other. So I like to see that match. But anyways, so right when Cena's about to speak, out comes Jimmy Uso, who takes the mic and said, what did I say before? Nobody wants you here. Everybody came to see him, Jim Uso. And if Cena wants to try and embarrass him again, either do it or get the hell out of the ring. Then out comes Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman. Jimmy starts jawing at Cena, and then Solo gets in and stares him down. But then he turns around, and he looks like he's about to do the Samoan spike on Jimmy. But then he turns around and super kicks Cena. And then they go for a hug, but Solo ignores it, and they 2-on-1 attack Cena. Jimmy shrugs off and joins the beatdown, and then AJ Styles came out to make the save. And then they clear the ring. Cena's about to do the 5 moves of doom on Jimmy, and then that's when Paul Heyman demanded Solo to get in there and save Jimmy, which he did, and that's how the show went off the air. So I'm guessing Fastlane is going to be John Cena and AJ Styles versus Jimmy and Solo, which they're probably doing this to set up for a match with AJ Styles and Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel. Like that or Survivor Series. I'm going to say Crown Jewel is more likely, I feel like, as of now. But I'm going to keep saying, the couple problems are, first off, AJ has lost a lot of matches the past, year and a half. He's lost a ton of matches. So I feel like he still needs a few more wins before, well, they're kind of giving that to him now. But then you got Jimmy Uso, which again, the idea is to get to a match with him and Jay. Why would I want to see that if Jimmy keeps losing? You know? I don't know where they go from here. Like I said, it's confusing a little because once again, they have, it should be working. But then they have either 1 week they want him in, 1 week they don't want him in. One moment Jimmy wants in, then he doesn't want in. And then, of course, this week's episode, we have the Judgement Day trying to recruit both Jimmy and Jay, but why? And the whole idea is to separate them from each other for a bit. So, and also, why would Jimmy join the Judgment Day if he really wants back in the bloodline? Because he wants to be the Tribal Chief's successor. So, I don't know. But that's SmackDown. It was still good. I gave it a B as a generous grade. I almost thought maybe B-, but The Rock being there, several other things that I did enjoy as well on the show too. So again, I gave it a B. So that's my thoughts on this week's episode of SmackDown. What are your guys' thoughts on this episode? Leave your guys' thoughts down in the comments section below. And be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content on my channel. Follow me on Twitter at the Club of the Man 93. Also follow me on TikTok and Instagram at the Club of the Man 1993. And until then, guys, I'm checking out. I will catch you guys all later. Have a great rest of your day. And do not forget, in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. And for I am the man himself. And that is not just an opinion. That is a fact of life. Yeah!